For men in war, death is an ever-present possibility and terror.
Matter is 99% empty space, and zero-dimensional points. We can verify that time travel into the future is possible at high
Soldiers
speeds.
who experienced
We have
near-death
quantum
encounters
particles that can
suggest that
teleport
death
through
may not be
impenetrable
something to be
walls,
feared.
in two places at the same time, and change their behavior when there is a conscious observer.
At what point does life
Mechanics
fade
is much
into
more
death?
than theories and interpretations.
Is it possible to
provides
scientifically
undeniable
prove
and
that there is
mathematical proof
life
that everything
after life?
we know and experience works in ways that are fundamentally surreal. Isn't it only science that is making us think about our sense of reality? Neuroscience studies the mind and has given us many insights about what is still the most profound mystery in biology: consciousness. The definition proposed in 2012 establishes some of the
This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanations, but not necessarily the only ones, to the mysteries we will examine.
One disorder that can occur in association with migraine attacks and diabetes is called the Capgras delusion, which causes
During the
patients
11
to
long
develop
years that
false
America
feelings
was
of
involved in the
relatives.
Vietnam War,
Actually,
over
they were
57,000 men died in
Even when
combat.
patients who suffer this delusion seem to retain
There were
all
more
their
than
intellectual
300,000
abilities,
wounded.
they will still insist
The line between
and
life and
create
death
elaborate
was for these men
rationalizations to explain
very
how
narrow.
their family and friends have been replaced by frauds. Other disorders can cause patients to lose the ability.
In the case of one of those soldiers, Tommy Clack, Vietnam is more than just a hellish memory. Tommy, now an administrator at Atlanta's Veterans Hospital, encountered a life-after-life experience that remains very real.
I was a captain in the Army. In particular, my job was that of what's called a forward observer. I called in artillery and plane strikes and gunships and was actually the person that directed us from point A to B by reading the map and coordinates and knowing where we are at all times. At one particular morning, May 29, 1969 to be exact, we ended up in a big firefight.
The underlying patterns of our consciousness define our entire perception of reality. It also seems that our consciousness works more like a digital clock than an analog clock. Rather than a constant flow
Through the course of that action, I got hit by one of the incoming rounds we had coming in.
0.04 seconds, each of which make up one
I was
moment of
conscious the whole
consciousness.
time when I got hit. I
This is
remember
called
flying through the air,
quantization.
and I remember coming
Meaning that
down and I
something can be
sat up,
broken up
and I
in
looked
small
down and I
discrete
saw
building
that I
blocks.
was
Each
missing
state
my
of
right arm, my
consciousness
right leg, and my
consists
left leg
of a
was
certain
laying
amount
off
of
the side
information
like it was broke.
and can
I had several
theoretically
puncture
be
wounds
stored
over my body
on,
that I
for
was
example,
bleeding
a hard
from.
drive.
I saw everybody
While
running
not
around, and I laid back
currently
down,
within
and
we are seeing
from that
tremendous
point
progress
forward,
in
I guess I
research
really
that
started
aimed
thinking about
at
the fact that
simulating the brain.
my time had come. I really was going to die.
Some of the most reality-shattering
I heard no more
discoveries
battle
of the past
sound. I
century
didn't feel
haven't
anything.
even
There
been
was no
absorbed
pain.
in mainstream culture yet.
And I felt
And what we have found
this
in
calm
only
come
the
over my
past
body
decades
as I was
is
laying there.
starting to point to an understanding of consciousness that will change the way we look at life.
But
and
then
death.
the battle subsided,
In
and
2007,
they got in a
stem cell
medevac
pioneer Robert
helicopter.
Lanza proposed that time and space
And I remember that I was laying there on the ground.
Are not
They
what we
put
think
this
they are.
poncho over me.
Criticized
Like,
for being
the only time we put
incomplete,
ponchos over
but
people
at
were
the
when
same
they were
time
dead.
recognized as
And
scientifically
I guess for the
sound
first
and
time, and I had
potentially
no
revolutionary
comprehension
by
of what length
scientists
of time
ranging
this
from
was.
Nobel laureates in
I
physiology
realized
to
that I
astrophysicists
was
at
dead.
NASA.
I wasn't alive.
The
I
theory
wasn't
of
functioning
biocentrism
as a
describes
human being
reality
anymore.
as a process
And all of a sudden I
that
realized
fundamentally involves
that I
our
wasn't
consciousness.
visualizing this from the ground. I was looking down
Lanza's
and seeing
scientific
this
theory
go on. I don't
explains how
ever
without
remember leaving
consciousness,
my body.
all matter
So
dwells in an undetermined
it was really a
state
weird
of
experience because
probability.
there was no
Time has
emotion.
no real
There
existence,
was nothing.
and
It
space
was
is
just total
just a
peace and
concept
tranquility. And all
used
of,
to
I
make
just
sense of
realized I
things.
didn't exist anymore.
If we look towards neuroscience and quantum mechanics,
Typical
to
field
further
procedure
explain the
dictated
blocks
that the
and
mortally
shortcomings
wounded
of
be
biocentrism,
airlifted to the nearest
all at
possible
your level
field hospital.
are quantized states of consciousness. Reality, how we know it, does
Tommy
not
was
exist.
rushed to the
And
25th
if it had
Division
any
Headquarters
sort of
Hospital
existence that we
near
could
Cu
visualize,
Chi,
it
some
would
20
look
miles from
something
the
like
battlefield.
an endless sea of
One of the things that you learn real fast in Vietnam when you have a lot of casualties is that people have priority over other people depending on their wounds. Now, realistically, if I had been in charge, somebody in my condition, I probably would have given a low priority due to the extent of the injuries. But for some reason, a doctor came over and lifted the poncho up. I saw him do it very clearly, and all of a sudden I had a group of people on me trying to do whatever it is they were trying to do to me. They lifted me up and took me into the operating room. I saw them cut my clothes off. I saw them start IVs. I didn't feel any remorse or anything. It was just total peace and nothing for what was laying there that was my body. But then all of a sudden, I left that operating room, and there was almost like a blink of the eyes, and I was back at the battlefield where I had gotten injured. And at that particular time, I think is when I come to realize I really was dead, because everybody in Vietnam that I had put in plastic bags, when somebody got killed, you put them in a plastic bag, were right there with me. They were around me.
But with each moment
Jeff
of
and Mark
consciousness
and all these guys were right there with me. We communicated like we were talking with our minds. I was above the earth, and there was a gigantic brightness that surrounded the whole battlefield that was just pure peace.
Information encoded.
10 days later, I woke up and I was laying in a bed in Cu Chi, Vietnam. And I did not have to ask what went on. I remember everything that went on. I knew I was missing the limbs. I didn't realize they had cut my left leg off in the operating room. It was beyond repair. But I told the doctor everything that had gone on, what they had done to me, that I had been covered up. And even a couple of guys that lived through the battle with me stopped by, and I told them who had gotten killed that day, and there was no way for me to know that except that I had been with them, wherever we were, whatever that place was, whatever it was. We were there together because we were all dead.
Was Tommy indeed dead? How can we explain his profound and mysterious experience? If Tommy Clack had been a soldier during World War II, he probably would have died. The high-level technology of modern medicine saved his life and made it possible for him to recount his out-of-body experience. It is ironic, however, the same sophisticated medical devices which we use to keep Tommy alive also make it more difficult to determine exactly when death occurs. At the Veterans Hospital in Atlanta, physicians like Dr. Michael Sabin continually grapple with pinpointing the precise instant at which a human life ceases.
The definition of death is very nebulous, both medically and legally. There is no one generally accepted definition of when the point of death occurs. I can't give you in 10 words or less how we determine how somebody is dead. Sometimes it's obvious from examining the patient that there's no pulse, no heartbeat, and rigor mortis is set in so that the patient is obviously dead. But when you're talking about lack of vital signs, a cardiac arrhythmia or irregularity of the heartbeat, which would not support blood pressure, unconsciousness, all of these types of definitions that have been used in the past can be, there are exceptions to these at the present time, so it becomes difficult to establish medically, physically, and scientifically when the exact point of physical death occurs.
What is the precise moment that death occurs? Researchers are only now beginning to probe the depths of near death and a person's ability to return from that level of consciousness. As with most medical research, the investigation begins with laboratory animals.
We are cooling our experimental animal, rat, to a body temperature of about 10 or 5 degrees centigrade, which is about 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
Dr. Vosin Popovich of Emory University School of Medicine uses a cooling process in an attempt to define the instant of death.
When the body temperature is decreased to such a low body temperature, metabolic processes, heart rate, respiration, everything slows down and eventually stops. So the animal now looks dead. The animal is clinically dead, but it is not biologically dead. That means all clinical signs of death appear present, but the animal is still alive. After 2 hours, we could still recover that animal by rewarming. After 3 hours, we cannot, because we now pass the point of biological death. The point of biological death is passed.
In the Magui archipelago, the similar,
With the success that
smaller,
Dr.
salt-toothed
Popovich has had in freezing and reviving rats, it seems likely that the same could be done to humans. Some human bodies have been purposely frozen immediately after death. There has been at least one unsuccessful resuscitation attempt. An accident in Canada provided researchers with an unusual opportunity to try to revive a frozen boy. His story begins to unlock the secrets of that special place between life and death. It was a cold evening in January 1976 in an area near Winnipeg, Canada. The temperature had dropped from a brisk 32 degrees Fahrenheit to nearly 40 below. Ted Milligan, then 16, was a member of the St. John Cathedral School. Part of the curriculum included a 27-mile cross-country snowshoe hike. Ted set out on his assignment along with a number of his classmates. Only a few miles from the end of the hike, however, Ted collapsed into unconsciousness. His colleagues, unable to move him in the intense cold, returned to their school for help. Dr. James Bristow, an expert on human frostbite, freezing, and cardiopulmonary resuscitation, attempted to revive Ted.
The lad was clinically dead. There was no heartbeat. The cardiogram showed a flat line on the cardioscope indicating asystole. He was, of course, not breathing. And his body temperature was very cold to touch. And in fact, the temperature as recorded by a low-reading thermometer was 25 degrees Celsius, the normal being about 37 degrees.
Ted Milligan's heart had stopped beating for over 2.5 hours. Dr. Bristow worked over Ted's body for nearly another 2 hours. Conventional medical textbooks state that without oxygen for more than 4.5 minutes, a body will suffer irreparable brain damage and will die. Yet Ted regained consciousness and was perfectly normal. Ted Milligan, now a private in the Canadian Armed Forces, recalls his ordeal.
Well, mainly it was just like being asleep, like total darkness and waking up out of a sleep that you didn't know that you had gone into. I'm not afraid of dying. When I die, I'm going to die, and I'll probably die with a smile on my face.
Biological death basically means brain death, irreversible brain death, as opposed to clinical death, which is simply the lack of vital signs, heartbeat,